Bud Selig and Paul Tagliabue are headed back to Capitol Hill, and this time they'll be joined by Gary Bettman and David Stern. All four commissioners are scheduled to testify at hearings in front of the House Subcommittee on Commerce, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Those hearings begin today and will focus on a proposed law called the Drug-Free Sports Act of 2005. And with us now from Capitol Hill, the chairman of that subcommittee, Congressman Cliff Stearns of Florida. Congressman, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us this morning. Tell us first, what does the subcommittee hope to accomplish through these hearings?
Well, there's probably two objectives we have. First of all, we'd like to hear from the commissioners and the union heads what they think of my bill. And two, we would like to ask from them if they could comply with the existing bill, and if not, why not?
All right, you say you plan to ask them if they will comply. If this passes, will they be forced to comply? Is there some leeway there?
We're hopeful that the sports commissioners will support the bill. Commissioner Bud Selig has already indicated that he wants federal legislation if the unions won't act, so I think he's using my legislation as an attempt to try and get the unions to at least support some stronger, stiffer penalties as well as suspension.
Bud Selig has proposed much stiffer regulations in terms of positive drug tests with steroids. If baseball passes that on their own, is this bill likely to go away?
I don't think so. I think he's making a huge step forward. As you remember, the commissioner was talking about just fine of $10,000 back in January with a possibility of a 10-day suspension. So he's come quite a ways, and I think that's because of the threat of a federal piece of legislation. But again, I think we have to say there must be some universal testing, both in professional athletes as well as other athletic competitions. We have it in the Olympics, we have it in the NCAA. Why shouldn't we have it in professional sports? In fact, the World Chess Federation just adopted the World Anti-Doping Agency standards for universal testing.
And that universal plan, that universal testing policy that you speak of, you actually say, let's use the World Anti-Doping Agency plan. Why that one?
Well, that's the one that's used by the Olympics, and that's also used by the NCAA. We feel it's one way to do this. They also specify the number of steroids and types that they test for. It's done by an outside source. It's not somebody that's in-house. So together with this universal prescription, I think we'd have a solid way to identify athletes that are taking steroids, and we'd be able to rid ourselves of steroids in sports.
Congressman, how did you actually pick the witness list for the upcoming hearings?
It's a continuation of what I've been doing in the past, and I thought I'd bring in the commissioners. They were kind enough to come forward and to help, and so we straddled a two-day hearing to accommodate the different commissioners.
Why no current athletes on the list?
Well, as you know, some of the current athletes are reluctant to testify. We first would like to hear from the commissioners as well as the head of the unions, and we think from there we can move forward, if necessary, to have some of the players come. We've had some of the players appear on other government legislative bodies, including the government oversight. We are trying to do this in a low-key manner to try and get some consensus without heightening the hyperbole that might create from the players, and I'm hoping that somehow we can get a consensus here.
What's the timetable of the bill, Congressman?
Well, I think after this hearing, this week, these 2 days of hearings, we should be able to have a consensus of what we can do. And then obviously I'll talk to all the members on the Democrat and Republican side on my subcommittee. I hope to have a markup in the next 2 weeks. It'd go to full committee, and then it perhaps would be amended or perhaps changed in some way before it hits the floor. But I think if you ask every member of Congress, do you think steroids should be allowed in baseball or football or basketball by our professional athletes, our elite athletes, the answer would be no. Not just because it's against the law, but it's a form of cheating. And that's the wrong signal to send to our young people today who are competing to become athletes in college as well as in the professional sports.
Okay, Congressman Cliff Stearns of Florida, thank you for joining us. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Commissioners Selig and Stern, among others, testify today. Commissioner Tagliabue